right, welcome to the walkthrough video for Lab 2. It's called Advanced Recording and Editing Techniques. We're going to do a little bit of recording in this lab. It talks a little bit about using count-off, pre-roll, and quick punch, and though I don't have specific steps for it, I will talk a little bit about that when we get to the recording steps. In the meantime, we're going to take a look at creating and saving a basic mix template, which is something that might seem kind of abstract now or like an extra step in this lab, but it's actually really helpful, especially if you're working on a session and let's say you record a song with a group and then, or you're doing a recording and you basically like all the settings and plugins you had for a specific setup and you just want to import them into the current session that you're working on. So the create and save basic mix template can be super helpful. We'll also make sure that our interfaces and Pro Tools are all set up to record because we will be doing some recording in this lab. So if you're starting this lab or following along, the first thing I would do is make sure you restart your computer and have your interface plugged in and turned on and all that. And you may have to stop this video at some point and restart your computer or take a moment to make sure that everything's plugged in. And we'll go over those steps. We're also going to use kind of a cool software that some folks in Music Production 1 showed me a few semesters ago. It's an AI software, and it actually can take just a basic MP3 and make stems. So I thought some of you might find this interesting to be able to just sort of isolate a vocal track or a drum track from a certain song. So I just thought it'd be a cool thing to show you. It's a free software on the internet that we'll use and we'll incorporate into today's lab. We're also going to label, color, marker, tempo adjust the session based on whatever stems we import. I ended up using the song Lose Control, but you can take whatever stems or use whatever MP3 you want when we get to that step. We'll do some basic recording, including Pro Tools. We'll do some loop record, count off. Like I said, we won't mess around with pre-roll and quick punch officially in the lab, but I'll show you those steps and how to turn those off and turn those on. Depending on what you record or what you decide to additionally record to the session, you may have different needs. But the big thing is we'll show you loop playback and loop record. So not only can you practice what you're going to record, but you can do multiple takes and then go through and sort through those takes. Next, we'll import the mix template that you made in the first step, and we'll use that to kind of create a final bounce mix of the imported stems and what you recorded. There's a bunch of shortcut keys. These are some big ones. They include not only creating a session and creating new tracks, which I think we've done quite a bit. I also talk about just closing the session and not actually quitting Pro Tools, but which becomes really important in like a recording scenario, or definitely like in a studio scenario. Hey, real quick, I'm getting a bunch of delay in my headphones, so I'm just going to go to Playback Engine here, and it's 512. Let's see, that's a little bit better. I was getting quite a bit of delay, and I didn't enjoy it. You did lose me there for a second as I reset that engine. Anyways, so yeah, we'll also look at importing session data, which is how we're going to import that mix template that we made into our current session or into our Lab 2 session. We'll also look at loop playback, loop record, and also starting recording, not using the transport, but just either using Numeric 3 on the keypad or Command Spacebar. So the first thing we're going to do is create a basic template. So you're going to want to go ahead and create just a session here. You can just call it template session. You don't even really have to save the session if you want to, because what's going to happen is at the end, we're going to export whatever we create in Pro Tools as a template. So there'll really be no need to save this session. You could keep it if you want, but this isn't going to be the final session you hand in. We're just going to use this to create a template. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we do Command N to open this dashboard window, like I show here, we can just call it template session. like I suggested in the lab. And then just make sure your file type is WAV, bit depth 24-bit, sample rate 44.1, and then for your I/O stereo mix, you can just save it to the desktop if you want. So I'll just hit cancel because I already have kind of some of this stuff already done. You can see I've already made a template here. I already have pretty much like a session going on here. So I'm going to kind of reverse engineer this to kind of show you what I did as we go. Hold on, let me just like hide a few things that we don't need to see. So let me just hide that, and I'll hide the here back as well. Great. So if you can see my template basically here, let me just hide all this other stuff for a second here. So I'm just gonna Option Shift and just hide that. So basically what your template should look like is what I have here in the window, which is basically you're going to create 3 stereo aux tracks. As the lab asks you to do, you're going to go ahead and create one stereo master fader, and you can just leave it called master fader. You're also going to create 3 stereo aux inputs, or aux tracks as I often call them, and we'll label them later. They're just going to come in as, aux1, aux2. I went ahead and I renamed them S-verb, L-verb, short delay, and did that. If you notice, I also changed their inputs to bus 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Do you notice how in my template here, it says bus 1 and 2, L verb, S delay, and there's also one called S verb. So I've actually gone ahead and renamed these from bus 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 to S verb, L verb, and S delay. I also put just like this basic on the S verb here. I just put a short, or I think I got them backwards. Yeah. I actually put like a really short delay, small room here delay on this track. On the L verb, I put a much larger verb. And then I didn't really adjust the parameters to this short delay, but just putting a really short delay, like 12 seconds and 23 seconds on each side. You can mess with some of the other parameters, but just having like a basic delay. By the way, too, you don't have to follow this exact like types of aux tracks. If you want to put other things in here, compressors, other things that you would like normally use in your mix, feel absolutely no obligation to specifically use this, but if you have like another way you like to work, that's fine. I would definitely include a master fader, and on that master fader, I would make sure I put an EQ, which you might use later, as well as the Maxim plugin. But notice I have them bypassed. That way, later when you open them up and import them into your session, they'll be bypassed. Another thing, let's see, I also went up to track and went down to create click track to create the click that I have here currently in the session. So once you've made your template, if you want to add anything else, that's fine too. I think the major points are to create some aux tracks, put some time-based effects on them, and then set up the inputs to be a specific bus, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and 6. Put some plugins on those auxes, as well as some EQ and Maxim on the master fader. Once you've done all that, you can navigate up to File, and instead of just doing it a normal save, we're going to save as a template. And so what we could do is we could actually install this template into the like dashboard load up screen, so you could select it when you like created a session. So this could be really cool if you like normally use like a synth and like one input for your guitar, or you just like to do a vocal track with a piano. You could actually create a template where it has a vocal track routed to your interface with like a piano, and then save that under a category here. This one's Dolby Atmos, but you could just add a category like My Jams. Let me create a new category called My Jams. And then we could put, I'll hit OK, and we could save this under the jam if I wanted to do that. So let me just do that real quick, just so I can show you that. We'll hit OK. It'll just save it. Let me go also up to and do a save template as, but this is how the lab asks you to do it, which is to actually just select a location of where you're going to save this. So I'm going to just check that and hit OK, and then it'll open up the save dialog window, and I can just go ahead and save it on the desktop as mix template. And I'll just save it on the desktop, hit save. So now if we were quickly to navigate to the desktop, you can see I have this file here on my desktop now called mix template, which will basically be this this here, which is just my 3 aux tracks, a click track, and a master fader. So real quick, so we've got that in here. I'm just going to go ahead and select these for right now, and just go to hide, so they're not there. I'll keep them active, but they're just hidden. Because the next step in the lab then says to just go ahead and save that template, or save it as a template. And then it's asking you to kind of sort of move along with the lab. So after I've gotten to that step where I've just sort of saved it, you can see here it's just like saving it to the desktop. I'm going to create a new session. So I already have my session open, but I'll go ahead and do this step anyways. So if I did Command N, the cool thing is now if I went to create from template, because we created that template, if I look for here, I have that subfolder called My Jams, and then look at, there it is. That's the jam. I named it the jam. So we're not going to create it from a template, but like I said, you could make your own templates or your own presets and then just load a session from that template. Instead, we'll uncheck that, and we're just going to make a blank session. I believe the lab asks you to do year, month, date. If I can spell here. Year, month, date, your name, and then lab 2. Once again, this is going to be our actual lab that we're going to turn in the actual folder, unlike what we did with the template. So we'll go ahead here and just make sure it's WAV 24-bit 4:1 stereo mix, and we can save it to the desktop. So we should be able to find this session sitting somewhere on the desktop now. So here it is sitting on the desktop. And actually, if I open this up, you can see I've already dragged the mix template that was sitting on the desktop here. I've already dragged that into the folder. So you can see we have our year, month, date session file here. I actually have 2. I've done a couple saves, but I've also just dragged that mix template right into the folder. So not only is it in the root directory of my computer and I can access it every time I create a session on my computer, but I also have a copy of that template in the session folder, which could be helpful too, because then if I go to any other computer or really anywhere else, I could always recall that mix template. So sometimes if I know I'm going to have a specific setup, I'll do it ahead of time before I get to the studio. In that way, I'll have it and I can recall it on other computers. So once I've done that, the next steps involve just making sure that my audio interface is on and working. If you're getting sound, you probably are. If you're getting any sound, you probably have your interface on. Hopefully you're listening through it. If you are using a Scarlett, then you probably know if this green light's on, that means you are connected to the computer via USB. It just basically says, it shows you here how to set up your interface, whether you're using a microphone or an instrument. Today, I won't be recording vocals. I'll actually be recording some lap steel. I'll be using an instrument. So it just goes through the setup of how to do that. When we get to the recording step, I might review that a little bit. I'm, of course, not using a Scarlett interface. I'm using an SSL interface. So one other thing we should check, though, is just to make sure our playback engine is rocking and rolling. So I'm just going to go up to Setup and Playback Engine. I think earlier I had this at 512 as the hardware buffer size, and I told you I was getting a little delay, so I actually shortened it to 256. If you keep this hardware buffer size up at 1024 and you try to record vocals or listen back, you're probably going to hear a bit of a delay or like echo, and that'll be hard for you to, kind of time up with what's happening in the mix. So usually 512 is pretty good, but some people are like really sensitive to any delay. So 256 or even as low as you can go would be better for recording. You can see just here, instead of the Scarlet interface, I just have the SSL selected because that's the interface I'm using. Also, too, it's just a good idea to have any of the optimizations unchecked. You don't really need them, and they're really kind of special case scenarios when you'd actually need them on. And then they're not always the safest settings, because sometimes they can introduce distortion, pops and clips, or clicks that you can't actually hear unless you bounce it. So it's a recipe to get fired. Usually having those on aren't great unless you're trying to do something very specific. So I'll hit OK on that. The lab also does ask us to go up here and just check up on our I/O. The I/O should be all set. You can see just for my outputs here, I have my main output 1 and 2. I also have this audio bridge, but that's how I'm doing these walkthrough videos, by sending audio out to multiple places. For my input, it's just 2 inputs on the SSL. And as far as my buses, it's kind of cool here because you can see I have buses 1, 2 are here, but if you've noticed, I've relabeled some of the buses already to LVerb, SDelay, and SVerb when I renamed bus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to SVerb, LVerb, and SDelay respectively. So just, by the way, if I wanted to go and just get rid of those names, I could just go here and delete them and just hit default, and that would give me all my default names. So it would revert all the buses back to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you want to do that, you can, and then you could always just rename them later. Okay, so I'll hit cancel on that. I don't want to change anything. The other thing, which is a window you've probably never gone into before, but it can be pretty helpful. It's still under setup. It's a window called disk allocation. And honestly, you never really need to change this, but it's just showing you wherever your media is or the audio that's with your session, where it's actually located. So if I click on this, it'll actually show me where currently this audio file is. If you start going in and messing around with this a lot, it may change it. If you do a custom allocation, you can actually send it to a certain drive or have your audio saved somewhere else. The reason I bring this up is sometimes you can do a recording on a computer, like one of the lab computers, save everything in your session, back it up, copy all the audio files, and put it on Google Drive, and then try to open it on your computer, and the audio files will be missing. Well, sometimes this allocation gets changed from the actual audio files folder in your session, right? Or like this folder here. It gets moved from here to maybe just somewhere on the hard drive of the computer. So in order to avoid that, you could go in and make a custom allocation, which I will not do at this point, but you could do that, and then you could tell it where you want that folder to be. So you could always point that right back to the audio files folder of your session. By the way, when you're importing stuff, it's not such a big issue, but with recording, it can be specific. It can be a specific issue, because with recording, if this disk allocation is not set to that audio files folder, it may record all your audio to the documents or somewhere else on the computer. And then, like I said, if you try to move that session or you try to open it up on a different computer, that audio that you recorded will be missing. So you don't really have that problem if you're just like mixing or like working on another session. But like today, we'll be recording, so it could be an issue. So I would just check that window out, just make sure that your allocation is not somewhere weird. Great, and it does actually tell you to go through and make a custom allocation to just put it in the audio files folder of your current year, month, date, year name, lab 2 folder. It also, too, at this point tells us to drag that mix template file, if we haven't already, drag it on into the session because, let me zoom out here. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, it just says this mix template. If you haven't already, drag it in to this folder. All right, so next it says to import some stems. And you're like, well, what stems? Well, you got to go find some stems. So you can go to YouTube and listen to a video, find a video of something you like. I describe here how you can go to this YouTube MP3 downloader to actually download some files. Let me see here. If I go to Fadr AI software, let me just go through the steps here. So let's go to YouTube here. I'm going to do lose control. Teddy swims. This is the video I picked. I picked like the shorter, I picked the radio edit. So I basically just opened the video up. There's going to be like a weird ad, but I just copied the URL up here, Command C to copy it. And then I went to this other link, which is just a YouTube downloader. You can just paste the link in there and you can hit convert. You might just want to be careful. A lot of these sites have a lot of sort of issues with viruses and things like that. So you can download just an MP3 version of it. That's absolutely fine. I'll try doing that. Usually with this one, it takes it a second to convert it, and then you can just actually download it. You'll see it just downloading right now to my desktop. I feel like the bandwidth for downloading on this, even though it's only a 5.7 megabyte file, it usually takes a minute here. So while that's downloading, we can go to the other link here, which is Fadr AI software. And it says to upload a song. So I'll go ahead and upload this Lose Control MP3 here. Open it on up. So once I do that, it starts to upload it and I can just hit stems. It's going to take it a second to sort of upload it here. You can see. And then after that, it'll start stemming it. I think I already have a version of it up here. So I think if I click here, I don't have to wait for it. Yeah, I don't actually have to wait for it to stem because it's already stemmed it for me. I did this like previously. And the cool thing is, so now I've got two of them, but you can audition, usually splits it into 4 parts. Now, if you want the version, there's a version of the software where it'll do every single track as a separate stem, the best it can. But that's a paid version. But for free, you can get just sort of the vocal part, maybe a guitar part, the drums isolated, and then sort of an accompanying part. So you can go ahead and just download those stems. I've already done that step. So I'll show you what I have here. So they just download. I kept the original MP3 as well as there's just a zip file. If you open that up, you can see there's the Lose Control file here. It looks like there's one that's just the bass part, one that's just the drum part, instrumental, another track called Others, or Other, and then the vocal track. So all I did then is once I had those files, I just dragged them into my current session. So I'm going to go ahead and show those tracks that I dragged in. I just dragged them in over here to the tracks list. I've already color coded them. Let's play back. You can see not only do I have a bass track, a vocal track, but I have drums, organ, and some other track, which is really, it just really sounds like a duplicate track, but let's play it back.
Something's got a hold on me lately. No, I don't know myself anymore.
Great, so you can see here's the bass track. We're hearing the click track because I think it's still active here. I'll just mute it for right now. There's the drums track. I think he plays a little bit later here. So it's pretty good. Here's like an organ track. See, the organ also has drums in it though, so it's not a great isolation on that stem. There's this other track, which just kind of seems to be like a guitar track. And then there's this Vox track.
Oh no, I lose control.
So the vocals are pretty good, and the cool thing about the vocal track is you could probably even just like if you wanted to do like an a cappella version or like a karaoke track, you could just mute the Vox and you'd have all the backing track. Or you could do an opposite where you just take the a cappella or the voice part and kind of create a new composition around it. That's not really the goal of this lab, but like I said, I wanted to show you this technology because I feel like a lot of you could use it for either sampling or just ideas. We'll talk about in a later lab too how you can export a lot of this stuff as MIDI, so you can kind of even find out what they're actually playing. If you can't use your ear to kind of hear what they're playing or what the different parts are doing, you can convert the audio to MIDI to discover that. So, by the way, I also just dragged in the original MP3 for reference here. Great. So there's just the original reference. If I remember like what's supposed to happen here, or does it sound weird or something like that. But for the most of the time, I'm going to leave that reference muted. By the way, the lab, after you import it, so you can use the Teddy Swims song, Lose Control, if you want, or whatever you're interested in. I started this lab using like a different track by Scarface, and it just like the timing kept shifting. So I ended up just using this kind of more contemporary hit that has a pretty straightforward tempo. So next thing you want to do is just make sure that you have your tempo and meter set up correctly in your session. So I went ahead and it said it was 80 beats per minute on this track. That's another cool thing that Fadr does, is it does give you a rough estimate of what the BPM is. Sometimes it's accurate. Other times I found it's not quite correct. So sometimes you have to go in and tap the tempo like we've done in past labs. So anyways, I went here and made sure that the tempo was 80 beats per minute. I just clicked the little plus here under the tempo ruler. By the way, make sure that you have bars and beats grade, so you know that that's your main ruler there. It's kind of a grade there that means it's the main ruler, so that'll be our main counter. It also set up our grid. This song was a little tricky because I had to add the meter ruler as well, because it wasn't just 4/4. It was either in 3/4 or I calculated it more as 6/8. So I went in right at the start and made a meter change of right at bar 1, beat 1. I made it 6/8, and instead of just being a quarter note, I made it a dotted quarter note as the beat. So you could probably get away with 3/4, but I did it as 6/8. If you use a different song, you can just kind of tap the tempo in, or most songs you probably import would be in 4/4, so it's not a big deal. This one's just a little bit different. Usually, like I said, Fadr is pretty good about telling you what the tempo is. The next thing the lab asks you to do is go ahead and color code things. I'm asking you to use my color convention, but if you have your own, that's fine. Notice I made the bass track purple. By the way, working with the selector tool when you're trying to do track colors is probably the best way to go. If you click over here on the track color code bar here, it opens that color palette window. And the cool thing is, if you select just the track, I'm option clicking, by the way, to deselect all the tracks. If I hold option, I select all of them. If I hit option again, I can select one at a time. And also, by the way, notice I'm doing the track color right now, so I could change the track color to red. I'll put it back to purple. But if I double click with my selector tool here, notice how it switches to the clip color, and then I can independently change that clip color as well. So usually when I'm doing color coding, I just make sure I have everything deselected by option clicking on the keyboard. And then I'm using my selector tool. If I double click, it'll turn into the clips. If I select a track name, it'll go back to the track color. So I just did bass is purple, drums is yellow, organ in this other track as yellow. The Vox is just that default blue. And then my reference track, I usually have a lighter blue. By the way, you don't have to use this convention, but it's the one I use. And no matter where I am in the session, like no matter how zoomed I'm in, I know like right at this point, like even if I make this track gigantic, I know if I'm super zoomed in, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the bass track right now. I know I'm looking at the organ track and the drums, just based on the color code. By the way, when you get like 87 tracks in a session, that starts to become a little bit more important and helpful. Especially like in the last lab where we had like 7 or 8 drum tracks, just like knowing where the drums are, even just taking a look at the mix window at a glance, it's helpful. Okay, so after we've done all that, it wants us to put in some markers. I did not do that with the Teddy Swim song, but you can do it by hitting the enter key. on the numeric keypad. If you don't have a numeric keypad on your laptop, you can always just go to a specific bar, like I'll go to bar 9 here. And if you just hit the little plus symbol here on the marker ruler, it'll open up that marker new memory location window where you can put, we'll call this V1. So at bar 9 now I have the V1 marker. So if you can't use the keyboard shortcut, you can always just make sure your marker tab's open here and just use that tiny plus. And wherever you have your cursor, that's where it will put the marker. Okay, let's see. After we've done all that, we're actually going to import that mix template back in because we're getting to a point now where we want to just like get everything going, have the click track running and all that. So I already have it imported in my session here. I just have it sort of hidden over here on the left-hand side. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how I import it, and then I'm just going to not actually import it. So I'll go up to File and do Import, and I'll go to Import Session Data, or one of our shortcut keys for today, Option-Shift-I. So let me just do it one more time with the shortcut keys, Option-Shift-I, and that opens this Import Session Data. And so what we need to do is we actually need to pick either a Pro Tools file or a template file that we actually want to import the session data from. So I'll go here and click on this mix template. And that's the mix template that we made earlier in this lab that I dragged into the folder. And if I hit open, this very scary detailed window opens up with a lot of stuff. A lot of it's just information about the session here, like on your left-hand side, it's just the properties of that session. So you can see what the bit depth and sample rate of that session was, where it was made, on what version, and all that. Usually the time code and track offset, we don't have to carry about these windows too much or care about them. Media options, this is usually set fine, and sample rate conversion is not something we usually need to do. Unless you have something at a really high sample rate and you're working in 44.1, but that's not the case. Really just what we want to focus on are what tracks do we want to import or what data do we want to import. So if you just click on these tracks, I'm not holding shift, they automatically link, and they're just going to take these and bring these in on a new track. So it's allowing me to see there's the click track, there's the S verb aux, the L verb aux, the S delay aux that I made earlier, and the master fader that I made. I can bring those all in. There's other things you can import too, like if I made certain markers, that type of thing, I could bring those in. If there's certain things you don't want it to bring in, you can always hit the choose button here, and it opens this laundry list of things that you can ask it to import or not to import. For this, just make sure that these main things are selected. Everything should just be selected. You're just going to be importing everything from the template you made. But you could not. There could be scenarios where you don't want it to bring in certain information. So I'll just hit OK. I'm going to hit cancel. But if I hit OK, then basically what will happen is what I already have going on in this session where if I show these tracks, it's just all of a sudden going to bring in the previous mix template that I made. And it's all ready and set to go. So yeah, and that's why we heard that click track even though they were hidden. So yeah.
I don't know myself anymore. Feels like the walls are all closed.
Great. So we have everything we really need to go here. We have our stems here. We have our aux tracks when we want to start mixing, like putting some reverb on things. And we have our master fader ready to go to put maximum EQ on it when we're ready to finalize. By the way, I did put this other trim on here, but that's just for the recording that I'm doing. So don't pay attention to that. Next thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and create, let's do some recording. So the first thing we could do is we could do a little loop playback. Loop playback and loop record are kind of the same idea. Let me find a section.
Out of my mind.
All right, so I'm just gonna loop from bar 9. Let's see, I'll make my grid 1 bar here so it's easy to do this. I'll do it from like 9 to 11. I'm just gonna loop up this one part.
Out of my mind, how many times did I tell you I'm out of my mind? How many times did I tell you I'm out of my mind? How many times?
Cool. Notice how it's looping? Well, why? Because first thing I did is I right-clicked on the play button up here and made sure it was looping. You can also engage that by going up to Options and going to Loop Playback, or Command-Shift-L to turn Loop Playback off and on. If I do Command-Shift-L, you can see that looping function here is toggling off and on. By the way, if you make a selection and then turn looping off and on, it doesn't work. So you have to make sure it's on looping first, or right-click here and hit loop, and then make your selection, and then it should loop that back. Well, why is this super helpful? Well, if we want to practice a part, or let's say we want to record some vocals on just the verse, like maybe we want to get rid of Teddy's vocals and do our own, take a stab at it, we could do that. So what I've done is I've created some audio tracks here. Let me go ahead and show the lap steel. So I made a lap steel track here. And one thing I could do, so I have it set to input 2. You might have it on input 1. I'm using input 1 for my vocals right now. But yeah, if I put this input monitor on and, oh, hold on. I actually have to turn on the lap steel here. Lap steel input. There we go. Great. You can see it. It's kind of just basic lap steel sound here. Let's great, sounds horrible. Sorry, this chair has arms on it. So what I could do is if I want to figure out a part, I could just press play. Okay, so it's great. So we could just do like a little loop there. If I wanted to, here too, I could put some plugins on here. Let me just, for fun's sake here, let me go to harmonic, and I'm just gonna put this, where is it? I have the tool rack. There we go. We'll do mono to stereo here. So put the tool rack on, and then I should have some presets under my ridiculous menu of stuff here. Hold on, let me go all the way down to the bottom to some of my show user presets. Well, that was not helpful. Okay. Oh, is this not the one I normally use? It is not. Sorry. This is, here we go. Tool rack, that's what I want. And yeah, if we go in there, let's see, do I have, I don't know, we could pick some of these presets, but I'm just gonna go all the way down to, I have some user presets here at the end. And if I go to one of those, I guess they're just like not showing up right now. Oh, there it is. And yeah, I've got some crazy ones. Why don't we try, I don't know, let's try this one. Oh, that's pretty nice. Oh, there you go. There's a little bit of noise on that. Let's turn that off. So yeah, I could press play. All right. So if you notice, the cool thing is I can be playing back and actually listen to the input because I'm using a function called input monitor here. And this input monitor function is nice because I can be playing back. If I had record enabled on, I'd also be able to hear the input, but when I press play, I would no longer be able to hear the input. So this input monitor function is really nice because it's just gonna let me basically loop playback a bunch, practice a little bit, and then eventually do some recording. So when I want to move on to record, I already have loop record enabled here. I'm going to go ahead and just turn it on again. Or if you go up to options, you can also go up to loop record, which is option L. So if I toggle here between option L We can turn it on and turn it off. So with it on, I'm going to go ahead and select bar 9 here, and I'm just going to start recording. By the way, I'm going to switch now then from input monitoring to record monitor. That way, as I'm recording, I'll be able to hear the input. Had to get my pick here. Okay, I think that's what I want. I'll come from the bottom here. All right, I'll take that one. Okay, so if I hit stop now, here's the thing. The last take I did will be there. So if I unrecord enable this and play it back, we should be able to hear that first take. Let's hear it with Teddy here. I think it'll probably get in the way of his vocal.
Out of my mind, how many times did I tell you I'm no good at being alone?
But it works in the song. Let me just mute this for right now. There's tons of reverb on it. Here's the thing though, if I did not like this take, I could, with my grabber tool here, I could right click and go to this window called matching alternatives and then match criteria. Right now, it's only showing me takes I've done on the lap steel here, which is pretty good. But I could just go to the match criteria window and just tell it that, hey, any takes that I want to see need to have the same track name or track ID and be from the clip start to end. If I took these off, let me take them off real quick, and then I'll just hit all. And then if I go to alternatives, notice how it has everything, every alternative playlist that's in the session. So when you go to the match criteria, let me go one more time here, match criteria, I'll limit it just to tracks that have the same track name and are from the same clip and start end time. If I do that and now I right click, you notice it only has those lap steel takes. So now I could just click here and go to this take. This was the take I think I did before.
Out of my mind.
Oh, I muted it, hold on. Let me turn Teddy off here too. Yeah, I didn't like that one as much. I think my favorite one was actually just the last one I did. Now, if you wanted to, you're like, you really want to come in right at bar 9 here, you could turn on your pre-roll and post-roll. So I could go here to, let's see, I think it's under synchronization. I so rarely use pre and post-roll. Let me go over here and go to, I'll just turn everything on. There's my count off. I'll just turn every expanded transport on. Okay, so there's a couple things I could do. So if I wanted it to really come in on bar 9, but have it start like 2 bars before, I could have my pre-roll set to like 2 bars. So if I made it 2 bars here, notice now, oh, let's see, 2 bars and hit enter. I don't know what's going on here. So now you can see I have this like pre-roll of 2 bars. So if I press play and I select bar 9, it's actually going to start playing back or recording at bar 7, which I actually don't really like, especially if I'm recording somebody else. I don't like to like select a 13 but have it start on 11. But you could turn those pre-roll on and off if you want. Another thing you could do is count off. So if you turn the count off on, the cool thing is if I press play, it'll just play. But if I was to hit to record here, let's see if I can do that. Record, enable the track. If I hit record, it'll give me 2 bars of count off. 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. So it's, hold on, it's 6, 8. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll press record. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it'll start recording. So you could do that. You could do count off, all that. The thing I really like about loop record is if you just select it here and you mess up on the first take and you're like, okay, then just get ready to jump right back in at 9. And you actually saw me do that when I was recording. Like I was trying to kind of figure it out. And then on that last take, I really just made sure to come right in on bar 9. This, by the way, they don't show up. These alternate playlists do not show up in the playlist unless you send them there. So if you're trying to go over here to playlist view, they won't show up. I created these other playlists, that's why they're there. But so don't be confused if you can't find the playlist view. Well, that's pretty much it for recording. By the way, there's also Quick Punch too. So one other function here is if I was to press play, you'll notice it'll just be playing. And then at bar 9, let me do it at like 15. So at bar 17, I'm just going to hit the command or just numeric 3 to start recording. So I'm playing back at 15. And then when I get to 17, I'm going to hit record, which it did not work. And the reason it did not work is because I don't have Quick Punch on. So let's go over to the record button here. Instead of having it on loop, I'm going to put it on Quick Punch. So when I do that and press play, I'll start on 15, it's playing, and on 17, I'm going to hit the record or numeric 3 to start recording, and at 19, I'm going to pull it back out. And there it's done. So then when you finish the recording, I basically punched in at 17 and then punched back out at 19. This is kind of an advanced technique, but a lot of people like it, especially if you're like tracking vocals for somebody. You can just like punch in at a certain spot and punch back out without ruining the vocals before and after it. Just to give you an idea of that, let me try doing it here. I'll start it at 5, punch it in at 7, punch it out at 9, and then punch it back out at 13, not to ruin this lap steel part. So I'll start playing. And at 7 here, I'm going to come in for playing in there. And then at 9, I got to get back out of the way. So I'm out of the way. And then at 13, I'm going to come in right at 13. But actually, I'm going to start a little bit early. Oh, I started a little bit too early. I'm now covering up the other waveform. Here's the cool thing about a Quick Punch is that, so you're like, well, Doug, you ruined the last part of this take because there's overlap here. Well, the best thing is with the trim tool, you can always just bring back the old take. So it's non-destructive. So even this one, you know how I stopped early? I shouldn't have. I should have just let it slide into the next measure because I could have always just dragged it back. So yeah, loop record, loop playback, and Quick Punch are some really great tools. I find Quick Punching is a lot more intuitive than actually using the pre-roll or the count off, but just so you know, those are options as well. As far as the lab's considered now, you don't have too much more to do. I would spend some time though, just mixing what you've recorded here, and just create a basic mix, kind of like we did in Lab 1 and what we were doing towards the end of Music Production 1 or Recording 1, where we just, create a soundstage using trims and panners and volume faders, do some EQ for clarity, so cut out some of the low end where you don't need it, use some basic compression, maybe using the ART method. By the way, if you have any questions about any of these, you can refer to the directions in Lab 1. Do some EQing for weight. Sends and return time-based effects. You already have all your time-based effects set up because we've already created this mix template here where you have buses 1 through 6 already set up to go to either the short verb, long verb, or short delay. And then you already have some EQ and compression on your master fader. And the only other thing then you need to do in your mix is to add some dither. The final step asks you to go ahead and just bounce to disk. So you're just going to select everything in the session that you want to bounce. So I'm just dragging up here on the ruler, selecting everything. You could select the end here and hit Shift Return to select everything. And then Command Option B, or just File, Bounce Mix. Then it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the directions in the lab. Year, month, date, your name, wave, output 1 and 2. You want to bounce it as interleaved, red books, so 1644.1. And then just make sure that you're bouncing it. Right now it says it's going to this other Lopez session here. So I'm going to just want to make sure it's in that folder here, year, month, date, lab 2, in the bounce files folder. I'll bounce it right there. So after that, I'll hit cancel. And then of course, I'm going to save everything. If I open my year, month, date now, I should have all my audio files in there. The bounce I just did should be in there. My mix template is in there, as well as my session file. So I'm going to take this whole folder, right click on it and compress it. And then this is the file. It'll take it about 5 seconds here, which is almost seems like too long to wait. Go ahead, save that there, and then we can just take this file, save that to Google Drive, and share it on Canvas. All right, well, that's the lab. If you have any questions, as always, I'm here to answer them. Just reach out.